Chapter 5 From the Mouth of a Frog. Alex was no longer in her bedroom. She was fallen into a world of light. She fell farther and farther and faster. She was dizzy and scared. She screamed out for help, but couldn't hear her own voice. Would she ever stop falling? What if she was going to die? Was she dead? She wondered if she would ever see her family again. She could hear birds chirping and trees blowing in the wind. The noise seemed to get closer and closer, but she just kept falling and falling, not knowing where she was falling to. "Ouch!" Alex said, hitting the ground. Her impact hit hard enough to hurt, but not hard enough to seriously injure her. Had it not been for the rough landing, she would have thought she was dreaming for sure. Alex quickly got her feet. She felt her pulse to make sure her heart was still working. She was still alive, from what she could tell. She was so thankful to have finally stopped falling, but where exactly had she fallen to? She was standing on a dirt path in the middle of a thick forest. The trees were tall and dark, with bright green moss covering their trunks. The sun's rays shined through the light mist. Birds squawked from high in the trees, and as she listened close enough, she could hear a tiny stream in the distance. She spun around, looking in all directions. Her breathing increased as she took in her new surroundings. Was she overreacting or not reacting enough to what had just happened? And what exactly had just happened? She looked to see if there was an opening she had fallen through, hoping to see some sort of window to her bedroom. But all she saw were tree branches and the sky above her. "Where am I?" she asked herself. Ah! As if he had fallen right out of thin air, Connor landed hard on the ground beside his sister. He was pale and screaming, and his limbs were stretched in all directions. "Am I alive? Am I dying? Am I dead?" he asked from the ground with his eyes tight closed. "You're alive!" Alex told him. She had never been so happy to see him. "Alex, is that you?" Connor asked. He slowly opened his eyes at one time and looked around. "Where are we?" he asked as she helped him to his feet. "It's like we're in some kind of forest," she said. It was unlike any forest they had ever seen, in real life at least. The colors were so vivid and the air was so crisp. It was as if they had fallen into a painting Alex was positive she had seen before. "Look," Connor said, pointing at the ground. "All of your pencils!" The path was littered with the pencils Alex had been dropping into the book all week. She found her school bag and a few dirty socks in the middle of the mess. But where were all the books she had dropped? Where were all the books she had dropped from the land of stories? "So this is where they all went," Alex said. "But where is here?" Connor asked. "How far away from home are we?" She couldn't answer him. She was starting to become just as worried as he was. They were worse than lost. "This is all your fault, Alex," he said. "My fault," Alex yelled. "We wouldn't be here if you had just knocked on my door instead of purging like the house was on fire. I knew you were planning this," Connor said. "I had to stop you." "I wasn't planning on going into the book. I was just testing it out," Alex explained. "You didn't have to follow me here." "Oh, sure. Was I just supposed to leave you in the book by yourself?" he exclaimed. "What was I supposed to tell Mom when she got home? 'Hi, Mom. Hope you had a good day at work. Alex fell through a book. By the way, what's for dinner?' Give me a break." Alex began jumping upward as high as she could. "What are you doing?" Alex said. "We fell from somewhere up here. There's got to be a way back," he said. But all of his jumping was pointless. Connor eventually tired himself out, and he took a seat on the ground against a tree trunk. "What if we were transported to another country or something?" Connor asked. His forehead became more wrinkled the further he thought about it. "What if it took us to Canada or Magnolia or somewhere? How long is it going to take for Mom or someone to find us?" Suddenly, the ground started shaking. A powerful rumbling had consumed the forest. The branches of the trees shook, and the small rocks of the ground began jumping as something massive moved closer toward them. "What's happening now?" Connor yelled. Let's take cover, Alex said. She grabbed her bag, and the twins ran off the path and into the forest a little way and took refuge behind a particular wide tree. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. A huge cavalcade of soldiers on white horses rode past them. The armor was clean and shiny. They carried green and silver shields with large red apples painted on them and waved flags with the same design. Alex, did we go back in time? Connor anxiously asked his sister. That looks like something straight out of medieval times. The pencils were all obliterated under the horses' feet. The soldiers were moving at such a fast and forceful pace that none of them noticed the awestruck twins peeking out from behind the tree. Alex was fixated on their shields. Red apple was such an odd thing to be displayed on a shield, but there was something so familiar about it. She couldn't put her finger on it. The rumbling slowly faded away as the soldiers disappeared down the path. The twins both stayed behind the trees for a few moments, making sure the coast was clear. I don't know about you, but I've had about as much excitement as I can handle for one day, Connor told Alex. A poster pinned to a nearby tree caught Alex's eye. She walked over to it and pulled it off the tree for further inspection. It was old, with faded writing, and a picture of a disgruntled-looking little girl with curly blonde hair was centered on it. The poster read, "Wanted, dead or alive, Goldilocks, for burglary, thievery, and running from the law." Alex's face went white, and she stopped breathing for a moment. She had realized where they were. No wonder the trees had been so recognizable. She had seen pictures of them so many times growing up. The book had taken them to the exact place she had hoped. Is it possible, she asked herself? The wheels in her head had never spun as fast as they were now. Is what possible? Connor asked. Do you know where you are? I think so, Alex told him. Where? Connor asked, fearing the answer. Connor, we went into the book, she explained, but wasn't following her. I think we're actually in the land of stories. She handed him the wanted poster, and he read it. His eyes grew as wide as the lemurs. No, this cannot be happening. This is crazy, he said, shaking his head. He handed the poster back to his sister as if it were infected with rabies. He couldn't believe what she was saying. He didn't want to believe what she was saying. Are you telling me that we're in the fairy tale world? I recognize the forest anywhere. It's straight out of Grandma's book, Alex said with an unplanned smile. But it makes perfect sense. Where else would it have taken us? We just fell through a book. Nothing makes sense, Connor said. So we're stuck here or what? How do we get home? I don't have all your answers, Connor, Alex said. Don't forget, all this just happened to me too. Connor began pacing around the trees with his hands on his hips. I can't believe I ditched attention and wound up in another dimension, he said. Alex was rather grateful her brother had come after her. They had lived together all their lives and had been in the same classroom since kindergarten. She didn't know if she could handle being in a different dimension by herself. I hope you're happy, Alex, Connor said. I told you we should throw the book into the creek. Enough with the blaming, Alex said. It doesn't matter how we get here. The point is we're here now. What matters is finding someone who can help us get home. Excuse me, may I help you? Said a proper voice behind the twins. They jolted at the sound of another voice behind their own. They turned around to see who had come from, and once they saw, they both wished they hadn't. Standing behind Alex Connor was what could best be described as a frogman. He was tall, with a wide face, big, glossy eyes, and shiny green skin. He wore a dapper three-piece suit and carried a large glass jar of lily pads. Forgive me for eavesdropping. I'm rather good with directions if you need some, he said with a very wide smile. Alex and Connor were so petrified that they were paralyzed. If they needed any more evidence that they were in the fairy tale world, this was their proof. You look awfully young to be in the forest by yourselves, the frogman said. Are you lost? Connor let his high-pitched squeal that lasted much longer than it should have. Please don't eat us, he said, and dropped to the ground in fetal position. The frogman looked down at him with a frown. Young man, I have no intention of eating you, he said. Is he always like this? The frogman asked Alex. Alex responded with a squeal almost identical to what her brother had made. I know, don't worry. I'm used to the people screaming at me, the frogman told him. Get out of your systems. The shock will only last a minute. We're sorry, Alex finally mentioned. It's just that where we're from, there aren't many, frog people. Sorry, that isn't the politically correct term for what you are. Alex let out another high-pitched noise. It wasn't a scream this time, but it was embarrassing nonetheless. The frogman studied their faces and paid special attention to their clothes. Where exactly are you from? Pretty far from here, Alex said. A piercing set of wolves' howls echoed through the forest. All three of them jumped at the sound. The frogman looked around the trees with fear in his big, glossy eyes. It's getting dark, the frogman said. We better get inside. Please, follow me home. It's just a few minutes' walk from here. Nice try, Connor said. The wolf howls again. This time, they were much louder than the first. Whenever the wolves were, they were getting closer. I know I look scary now, said the frogman to the twins, but I'm nothing compared to some of those creatures that lurk around these woods at night. I promise I will not harm you. There was such a concern in his eyes, it was hard not to trust him. The frogman took off at a brisk walk deeper into the wood. Alex nudged Connor. We better follow him. Are you crazy? I'm not going home with the giant frog. Connor whispered her. What do we have to lose? Alex said. Besides our lives, Connor said. But despite his protest, he was dragged up by his sister and pulled in the direction the frogman was leading them. The twins hurried behind the frogman for a good while. They zigzagged between the trees and jumped over boulders and tree roots that stuck up from the ground. The deeper they went into the forest, the thicker the trees became. It got dark very quickly. It was almost pitch black by the time they reached the frogman's home. Alex and Connor stayed close together. With every step they second-guessed if they had made a smart choice going with the strange creature. This way, he said. The frogman brushed aside some dead vines growing over a large wooden door that was camouflaged into the side of a small hill. He pulled the door open and led the hesitant twins underground. He looked back into the forest, making sure they hadn't been followed, before shutting the door behind him. It was very dark underground. Alex and Connor were so close together they could have been mistaken for Siamese twins. Forget the mess. I wasn't expecting company, the frogman apologized, and lit a lamp with a match. Alex and Connor didn't know what to expect of the frogman's home, but what they were seeing definitely wasn't it. They were in a large room with dirt walls and a low dirt ceiling. Roots from the tree growing above them down like a chandelier. A cluster of big, cushy chairs and sofas. Many of the cushions had the stuffing sticking out of them, sat on the center of the room, and were angled to face a small fireplace. Nearby teacups and pots hung from hooks over a tiny kitchenette. To Alex's delight, there were books everywhere. Shelves of books lined the dirt walls. Piles of books were stacked on every available surface and on the ground. It was as if the room were infested with literature. Connor, Alex whispered close to him. Look around. Look at this place. It's like we're having our own Lucy and Mr. Timas moment. Connor looked around and saw what she meant. If you're offer us Turgot's Delight, I don't care what you say. We're getting out of here, he whispered back. It's a little dirty, but it's cozy, the frogman said. It's hard to find a landlord who will house a frog, so I did the best I could with what I had. He placed his jar of lily pads on the mantel and immediately started the fire in the fireplace. He filled a tea kettle with water from a pitcher, placed it over the fire, and took a seat in a big white chair closest to it. He crossed his legs and folded his hands neatly in his lap. He is one proper frog. Please, have a seat, the frogman said, gesturing the sofa in front of him. The twins reluctantly did as he asked. The sofa was rather lumpy, so they had to shift around in their seats to get comfortable. What are you? Connor asked the frog. Connor, don't be rude, said his sister, elbowing him aside. It's quite all right, the frogman said, with a complicated smile. I understand my appearance takes some time to get used to. Even I haven't fully adapted to it yet. You mean you weren't always a frog person? Alex asked as politely as she could. Heavens no, the frogman said. I was cursed years ago by a very aggressive witch. Why? Alex said. She was fascinated by how casually he had said it. To teach me a lesson, I suppose, the frogman told her. I used to be a very vain young man. The witch transformed my appearance so I would lose all the things I took for granted. His wide smile softly faded. It had obviously been a very long and painful experience for him, and he still had a sad sense of loss and longing about him. The twins had never seen a frog look so sad. I can't even imagine what that must be like, said Alex, beaming with sympathy. Can we call you Froggy? Connor asked, with a small smirk. Connor! Alex recriminated. It's quite all right, the frogman nodded, and his smile returned. I've learned the more people embrace their disadvantages, the less disadvantaged they become. Please, call me Froggy. I prefer it. Connor shrugged and smiled. May I get you some lily pad tea? Froggy asked the twins. Both the twins nodded. They didn't want to be rude. Froggy retrieved the tea kettle from the fire and hopped, literally, to the kitchenette and poured water into 3 teacups. He opened the jar on the mantel and dropped a lily pad into each cup and stirred. Do you either take flies with your tea? He asked, reaching for another jar on his mantel. This one filled with dead flies. No thanks, Connor said, trying to quit. Suit yourself, Froggy said, and dropped a few flies into his tea. He handed them each a teacup and reseated himself across from them. They stared down at it for a few moments before deciding they at least pretend to drink it. What are your names? Froggy asked the twins. I'm Alex, and this is my brother Connor. A large and happy smile came to Froggy's face. Are you by any chance Alex Bailey? Froggy asked, grinning from ear equivalent. Yes? Alex was shocked. How did this amphibian know who she was? As in this book belongs to Alex Bailey? Froggy asked. He leaned over to the side of his chair and pulled up a stack of books, opening one to show the phrase was written in it. Those are my books, said excitedly, recognizing the book she had dropped in the Land of Stories. I was wondering what happened to them. It was so peculiar, Froggy explained. I was out collecting flies and was walking down the path to the swamp when one just fell in the sky and landed on my head. I returned the next day and found several more at the same spot. It was the oddest thing that's ever happened to me. Mean besides being turned to a frog, right? Connor asked. Because if I were you, that would be the top of my list. Ouch! Alex elbowed her brother. Froggy ignored Connor and went on to explanation. As you can see from my shelves, I love to collect books, especially when I'm not expecting to, he said. And these books were unlike any I had ever read. They described people and places I had never heard of, and thought I had seen it all. The author about such interesting places. Can you imagine a world without witches or trolls or giants? What imaginations! Froggy chuckled, and at thought of this, the twins laughed enough with the best fake laugh they could muster. Please keep 'em. I have duplicate copies at home, Alex told him. Froggy was delighted to hear this. Uh-huh, Connor cleared out his throat. Speaking of home, I don't mean to interrupt this little book club, but we're very lost and would like to know where we are. Froggy Glossy's eyes went back and forth between the twins, watching them closely. Oh, children, you wouldn't be here if you knew where you were, Froggy said. Here in the dwarf forest. He had expected to get some sort of word reaction from the twins, but Alex kind of just stared up at him with very little expression. The dwarf forest? Alex asked. What are the dwarf forests? You never heard of them? Froggy asked, completely appalled. The twins both shook their heads. It's a very dangerous place, Froggy told them. It's the only designated area of land without a ruler or a government. It's a kingdom where everyone is their own king. It used to be populated by dwarves who worked in the mines, but now it's full of criminals and fugitives mostly. It's a place where people go when they don't want to be frowned. Knowing they had not only traveled into another world, but were in a dangerous part of that world did nothing to help the twins' anxiety level. Are there other kingdoms? Alex asked. Froggy was stunned. It was as if she had asked him what color the sky was. However, he seemed to be enjoying their unfamiliarity. Of course, he said. There's the Northern Kingdom, the Sleeping Kingdom, the Charming Kingdom, the Corner Kingdom, the Fairy Kingdom, the Red Riding Hood Kingdom, the Elf Empire, the Dwarf Forest, and the Troll and Goblin territory. How can he possibly not know this? This was difficult for the twins to wrap their heads around. How big was the fairy tale world? Their puzzled faces inspired Froggy to hop out of his seat and cross to one of the bookshelves and return with a large rolled-up scroll. He handed it to the twins, and they unrolled it. It was a large detailed map of the new world they were in. The fairy tale world was a wide continent bordered by mountain ranges and covered in forests with castles and palaces and villages scattered all around. The Northern Kingdom was the largest of the kingdoms and took up most of the top of the map. The second largest was the Charming Kingdom, spread across the south, and the third largest was the Sleeping Kingdom, which stretched along the east. Dwarf Forest covered the majority of the west. The tiny Corner Kingdom was tucked away in the southern corner of the continent, and the northwest corner was the Elf Empire. In between the Charming Kingdom and Sleeping Kingdom was the Fairy Kingdom, and just above that was the Troll and Goblin territory. The Fairy Kingdom looked beautiful, as it was very colorful and seemed to sparkle on the map. The Troll and Goblin territory looked frightening and appeared to be surrounded by large boulders and rocks, preventing anything from going in or coming out. In the very center of it all was the Red Riding Hood Kingdom, circled by an unmistakable brick wall of gigantic proportions. Alex and Connor couldn't believe it. The world they had grown up hearing about was real. It was all real, and it was bigger and better than they could have imagined. Alex couldn't help but get emotional. Tears began to flood her eyes. Together, all the kingdoms create the happily ever after assembly, Froggy explained. The happily ever after assembly, Connor asked, with a slight touch of sarcasm in his voice. It's the organization formed to uphold the treaty all the rulers signed, so that all kingdoms could live in peace and prosperity, Froggy told him. Sounds like our United Nations, Alex whispered to Connor. All the kingdoms have their own traditions and celebrated histories, Froggy went on. And there are kings and queens, I'm assuming, Connor asked. Oh, yes, Froggy said. The Northern Kingdom is ruled by Queen Snow White. The Corner Kingdom is watched over by Queen Rapunzel. The Sleeping Kingdom, formerly known as the Eastern Kingdom, but renamed after the dreadful curse under which it was placed, is governed by Queen Sleeping Beauty. And of course, the Charming Kingdom is ruled by King Charming and his wife Queen Cinderella. Wait, are these the current monarchs? Alex asked with a spark of excitement in her eyes. You mean Cinderella, Snow White, Sleeping Beauty? They're all still alive? Of course they are, Froggy said. Oh my goodness, that's wonderful, Alex said excitedly. Isn't that wonderful, Connor? Whatever, Connor mumbled. How old do you think they are, Froggy asked. Queen Snow White and King Charming have only been married for a few years. Queen Cinderella and King Charming are expecting their first child soon. Queen Sleeping Beauty and King Charming are sadly still trying to restore their kingdom to consciousness after that horrible sleeping spell was placed under. Wait, Connor said. Are you saying all these queens married to the same guy? Certainly not, Connor said. There are 3 King Charmings. They're brothers. Of course, Alex said. Snow White, Cinderella, and Sleeping Beauty, they all married Prince Charming. There's more than one. How come I never thought about that? Alex's cars were fixated on the map. He kept searching for some kind of road or bridge that would lead them back home, but he found nothing. Why are there a bunch of rocks around the Troll and Goblin territory? Connor asked. As punishment, Froggy said. Trolls and goblins are nasty creatures and have a habit of kidnapping people and turning them into slaves. The Fairy Council forced the trolls and goblins into one territory, and none of them are allowed to leave without permission. Fairy Council? Alex asked. This world was almost too good to be true. Yes, there's a group of the most powerful fairies of the kingdoms, Froggy explained. Cinderella's fairy godmother is one of them, and so is Mother Goose, and all the fairies that blessed Sleeping Beauty when she was a baby are on it too. They rule the fairy kingdom and are the leaders at the happily ever after assembly. Is the Red Riding Hood Kingdom under some sort of punishment too? Kind of asked. Why is there a huge wall built around it? Alex looked down the map and back up at Froggy, equally curious. That was the result of the Crawl Revolution, Froggy said. What was the Crawl Revolution? Alex asked. The citizens' rise against wolf liberty, Froggy explained. The Red Riding Hood Kingdom used to be a group of villages in the Northern Kingdom that were constantly under attack by wolves. They begged the evil queen, Snow White's stepmother, who was on the throne at the time, to help them. But the evil queen was too occupied with her vanity. So they revolted and started their own kingdom. They built a huge wall around it so no wolves could get in. And now Red Riding Hood's the queen, Alex asked. Yes, she's the only elected queen in history, Froggy said. The villagers figured her story was the most symbolic of the struggle, so they chose her to lead it. But isn't she just a little girl, Alex said. No, she's a young woman now. A very self-obsessed woman, from what I hear. After all, she named the kingdom after herself. Her grandmother does most of the decision-making while she takes all the credit. Froggy said. Unfortunately, the Crop Revolution only led to the rise of the Big Bad Wolf Pack. The Big Bad Wolf Pack, Connor asked. Yes, they're the descendants of the original Big Bad Wolf. They travel around terrorizing villages and attacking unexpected travelers, Froggy said. Oh, joy, Connor said sarcastically. I'm sorry I asked, but besides that, things are very peaceful throughout the kingdoms, Froggy said. His voice drifted off, and uncertainty grew on his face. That was until a week ago. The twins leaned forward. What happened a week ago? Alex said. The evil queen escaped from the dungeons of Snow White's palace, Froggy told him. I thought everyone had heard. It's news to us, Connor said. That can't be good, Alex said. How did she escape? No one knows, Froggy said. She just vanished along with her magic mirror. Snow White's armies have been searching throughout all the kingdoms for her. They pass through these woods at least twice a day. So far they found nothing, not even a footprint to lead them to her direction. Do you think they're going to find her, Connor asked. I hope so, Froggy said. She's a very dangerous woman. She's the only queen in history to lose her throne. I couldn't imagine the revenge she must be seeking. Who knows what she's planning to do next? Alex suddenly became very tense. It had just occurred to her that along with all the characters she had grown up loving, all the ones she hated and feared actually existed too. It made her feel very uneasy and very unsafe. The fire in the fireplace began to fade, and Froggy got up to add another log. The twins' eyes and mouths were wide open, and their heads were spinning from all this new information. How far away do you live from here? Froggy asked, and as he sat back across from them. The twins looked at each other, back at Froggy, and then back at each other. They didn't know what to tell him. Would he believe them? They told him the truth. It's particularly a different world, Connor said. Alex shot him a dirty look and then nervously laughed, trying to make light of what her brother just said. Froggy wasn't laughing. He just sat up in his seat, but his face grew very still with an intensity in his eyes, as if he had found the solution to a mystery. Interesting, Froggy said, eyeing the twins back and forth. Because I didn't know better, just from the way you dress and the way you speak, and the way you were so surprised at basic history, I would say there was a very good chance you are indeed from a different world. They didn't understand what he was trying to say. Did he know something that they didn't? Just out of curiosity. Have you ever heard of another world? Alex asked him. Or preferably how to get back to it, Connor added. Froggy studied their faces even more intently for a moment. He got up again and went to a bookshelf on the far side of the room. He rustled through the books, looking for something of special interest. Finally, he found it, a small leather-bound journal with a red band around it. Have either of you heard the wishing spell? Froggy asked the twins. Alex and Connor shook their heads. Froggy flipped through the pages of the journal. I assume not, he said. It's a legendary spell comprised with a list of items, and apparently, when you put the items together, you are granted one wish. It doesn't matter how extravagant the wish is. The wishing spell will grant it. Many people believe that it's only a myth, and I did too, until I found this journal. What does that journal have to do with anything? Connor asked. It was written by a man from the Charming Kingdom, Froggy said. He managed to discover what these items were, and he recorded his journey to find them. His one wish was to reunite with the woman he loved, and in the journal he claimed she lived in another world. Alex and Connor sat straight up. They were sitting on the edges of their seat without realizing it. I thought the man writing the journal was crazy. I didn't believe another world could exist. until I began finding your books, Alex. And then when I saw you bickering in the forest, I knew you two were different, Froggy said. I knew you had to be from the place the man had written it about. The twins were happy the truth was out, and Froggy seemed genuinely excited about the whole thing. Did he make it? Alex said. Did the man cross over to the other world? He must have, Froggy said. The journal ends when he found the last item. Froggy handed the twins the journal and took a seat in his chair. Wherever you're from, if it's home that you wish to go back to, I think your best chance is by following this journal. The twins went silent for a moment. They stared down at the journal in his hands with immense hope. What items does the spell require? Alex asked. All sorts from all over, Froggy told her, but the journey gives great instructions on where and how to find them. Some of them are very dangerous to get. Of course they are, Connor said. Typical. If the spell will grant whatever you wish you want, why didn't you search for the items and wish to be human again? Alex asked Froggy. Froggy thought about this for a moment. It was a question he had asked himself many times, and he was ashamed of the answer. I kept a journal all these years in case I ever decided to, Froggy explained with difficulty. But searching for the items would mean I have to face the world, looking like this, and frankly, children, that's something I'm not ready to do. It's something I don't think I'll ever be able to do. He spoke from a place of deep sadness. Clearly, he wasn't finished learning the witch's lesson yet. It's getting late, Froggy said. Why don't you sleep on it and decide what you want to do in the morning? You're welcome to stay here as long as you like. Thank you, Alex said. I hope we're not a bother. No bother at all, Froggy smiled earnestly. Froggy got them a large blanket to share. He blew out all the lamps and put out the fire in the fireplace. Connor and Alex tossed and turned with thoughts of the wishing spell all night, but there was no decision to make. If the journal offered a possible way home, they would have done anything and everything it instructed them to. They had no choice. They were about to embark on the greatest scavenger hunt of their lives. Alright, that is the end of chapter 5, and we'll get to chapter 6 tomorrow. Hope you enjoyed that, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye!